Okay, so let's unpack this. It's um it's one of those things, isn't it? Wanting to support a friend after they've lost someone close, a profound loss, but feeling utterly, like, totally unsure of the right thing. What do you say? What do you even do? It can feel like you're just stuck,
Yeah.
paralyzed.
Yeah.
Even if you've navigated grief yourself, it doesn't automatically make it easier when you're trying to support someone else.
It really doesn't. That desire to help is so strong, you know.
Yeah.
But the fear of accidentally causing more pain, that often just makes us hesitate.
Or worse, maybe say nothing at all.
Exactly. And that silence can actually be another kind of pain for the person who's grieving.
Right. And that's really why we're doing this deep dive. It's kind of your shortcut maybe to
Exactly.
navigating these really sensitive moments with hopefully more confidence and real compassion.
Yeah. We pulled together some really practical stuff from, mental health research, insights from bereavement educators, and this is key from people who've actually been there. People on the receiving end of support after a loss.
Think about like our friend Anna, maybe she just lost someone. As we talk through this, you can think, how could this actually help her?
Our mission here is really to equip you, give you actual words that might comfort, specific actions that genuinely, lighten the load, and also flag some common pitfalls to avoid.
Like a roadmap.
Exactly. A clear roadmap for how to show up effectively when it really, really matters. Not just right at the beginning, but for the longer haul, too.
Okay, so let's maybe start with something foundational. Our sources really emphasize this, and it's something we hear a lot, but maybe don't always grasp in practice. Grief isn't linear. It's not a checklist, right? Not A, then B, then C. But what does that actually mean for us as the supporter, beyond just knowing the definition?
Well, it's interesting because intellectually, I think we get that grief isn't linear, but society sort of subtly implies it should be.
Right, like you should be getting better on some schedule.
Exactly. Research shows people often cycle through really intense emotions. Denial, anger, deep sadness, maybe moments of acceptance.
Yeah.
Sometimes all in one afternoon, or even like within minutes of each other.
Wow.
That famous stages of grief model. It was never meant to be this strict step-by-step thing everyone follows. It was more a framework for understanding common feelings.
Okay.
So experts really push for patience, not timelines. Flexibility, not expecting someone to just move on or tick off stages. The real insight, grief is more like waves, sometimes calm, sometimes totally overwhelming, always shifting.
That wave analogy really helps because we do tend to want that neat beginning, middle, end structure for everything.
Yeah, we do.
So if our friend Anna is cycling through all this, how do we as supporters stop ourselves from kind of projecting our own discomfort onto her, our own need for things to be tidy?
That's a great question.
That brings us right to, what to actually say, and maybe even more critical, what not to say. Our sources had some really powerful examples, but it seems like it's more about the principle behind the words.
All right. For instance, instead of trying to, fix Anna's pain or find some silver lining.
Which is so tempting sometimes.
Oh, totally. Try something simple like, I'm so sorry this hurts so much right now. Or even just, I'm so sorry for your loss. It validates what she's feeling now in this moment.
Without comparing it or minimizing it.
Exactly. No comparisons, no unsolicited solutions. That validation piece, according to our sources, that's just paramount.
I can really feel how that would land differently. It keeps the focus on them, not on my need to make it better. Our sources also suggest things like, I'm here for you and I'll keep checking in. Or just, I'm thinking of you. It sounds simple, but it's that promise of ongoing presence. Why is that so important? That consistent but maybe quiet promise.
It points to the future, right? In that initial shock phase, lots of people offer support. But the person grieving often knows deep down that a lot of that fades.
Yeah, the calls stop coming eventually.
Right. So acknowledging this isn't just a one-off event, that it's an ongoing process for them, that offers huge reassurance. It fights back against that deep loneliness that often creeps in weeks or months later. It tells Anna, essentially, I see this as a long road and I'm willing to walk some of it alongside you.
That's a really powerful distinction. Okay, another approach highlighted was honoring the loved one directly. You mentioned this before. Why is asking something like, tell me a favorite story about person's name so impactful?
It opens the door to storytelling. And research really shows that storytelling is a vital part of processing grief. It lets Anna connect with and express the bond she still has with the person who died.
It's not about moving on from them.
No, not at all. It's about integrating the loss, the person, into her ongoing life story. And just using the person's name, that simple act keeps their memory active. It signals to Anna that her loved one isn't taboo, isn't forgotten. It's okay to say their name. It affirms their life mattered.
Just making space for the stories, that's profound, but so simple. And the sources also suggest it's okay to just name the difficulty without trying to soften it too much. Phrases like, I can't possibly imagine how hard this is, but I really care about you. It shows humility, right? And empathy. You're acknowledging the depth of their pain without pretending you fully get it, which can sometimes feel, I don't know, invalidating.
Exactly. And related to that, a really key tip is to try and match their energy. If Anna feels like sharing a funny memory and laughs, it's okay to laugh with her. If she's quiet, just sit with her in the silence. Don't try to force a certain
To
mood.
them lead.
Let them lead. Now, just as vital as what to say is what not to say. These are those platitudes, the things we say often with good intentions, but they can cause more harm than good. They're so common, but often really unhelpful.
Okay, this is where it gets really useful, I think. What are some of those phrases we think are comforting but actually might sting? And why do they land so poorly?
Well, the classics, right? Everything happens for a reason. Or at least they lived a long life. Or they're in a better place now.
Yeah, I can feel myself cringing just hearing them.
Right. They're problematic because they essentially try to dismiss the person's current pain. They're looking for a positive spin on something that just is incredibly painful right now. They kind of imply, so you shouldn't feel so bad, which is just incredibly invalidating when you're deep in grief.
Okay. And what about things like, you need to be strong, or the classic, I know exactly how you feel? I imagine that last one is particularly tough.
Oh, definitely. Be strong puts this awful pressure on the grieving person. Like they have to perform resilience instead of just feeling whatever they're feeling.
Right, hide the messy parts.
Exactly. And I know exactly how you feel. Well, it's almost never true. You might have had a similar type of loss, but every grief journey is unique. And saying that can subtly shift the focus back to you, the speaker. It can make the grieving person feel unheard, misunderstood.
Yeah, it makes it about your experience, not theirs.
Precisely. Grief isn't some problem you can solve with a clever phrase. It's a process that needs to be witnessed and supported, not fixed.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving past words, let's talk actions. Our sources gave some incredibly practical advice here, things that genuinely lighten the load. And it's not about vague offers, right? It's about being concrete, specific.
Yes, in that initial fog, right after the loss, practical help is huge. Think about bringing over meals that are ready to eat, no cooking, minimal cleanup, offering rides for family coming into town, maybe walking the dog, handling phone calls.
Oh, handling calls could be huge.
Yeah, dealing with difficult relatives or just relaying information. These things address immediate, tangible needs at a time when, honestly, just thinking straight is hard. Cognitive function can be really impaired.
Yeah,
For Anna, just figuring out dinner might feel overwhelming.
totally. And then, okay, maybe in the first few months when some of that initial shock maybe wears off a bit and the reality is really settling in. The needs might change, right?
Did you?
So maybe then it's setting up a chore rota or continuing a meal train, offering to run errands, or just inviting her for a quiet walk, something low pressure. And the key insight here, which I really liked from the sources, is shifting how you offer instead of that general, let me know if you need anything.
Which puts the burden on them.
Exactly. Instead, offer specific tasks like, hey, I'm heading to the grocery store. Can I grab milk and bread for you? Or I made way too much chili. Can I drop some off for you on Tuesday night? Why is being that specific so much better?
It just removes so much burden. First, decision fatigue is real, especially in grief. Second, it removes the social awkwardness or pressure of having to ask for help.
Which is hard for a lot of people anyway.
It really is. Someone deep in grief often just doesn't have the mental energy to figure out what they need, then formulate it into a request, and then actually ask. When you offer something specific, you're not just offering abstract help, you're offering a concrete solution. You're basically saying, I've thought about what might be useful, and I'm ready to do it. That's a huge relief for someone like Anna, who's probably just exhausted mentally and emotionally.
That makes so much sense. And this connects to another critical point.
Well,
Keep showing up, especially after the casseroles stop coming.
yes. The casserole drop-off point.
Our sources really stressed that social support often takes a nosedive somewhere around, 2 to 6 weeks after the funeral. Why is that specific time, those weeks and months later, often so profoundly difficult? And why is our continued presence then so vital?
That's usually when the sort of adrenaline wears off, the initial flurry of activity and visitors dies down, the funeral's over,
Yeah,
life starts going back to normal for everyone else.
but not for them.
Not for them at all. For Anna, her world has fundamentally changed. This is often when the really deep loneliness kicks in. When the day-to-day reality, the absence of their loved one, becomes incredibly sharp and painful. Your presence then signals that their loss isn't suddenly old news to you just because time has passed.
So practically, what does that look like, continuing to show up?
Well, our sources suggested actually putting reminders in your calendar. Check in around the 1 month mark,
Yeah.
then maybe 3 months. Absolutely acknowledge the first birthday or major holiday without their loved one, and definitely the 1 year anniversary.
A consistent.
That consistency demonstrates long-term remembrance. It says, your person mattered and your grief still matters to me.
Okay, so consistent support is key. But it's also important to know when maybe professional help might be needed, right? Our sources mention that around 7 to 10% of bereaved people develop something called complicated grief.
Yes, that's right.
What exactly is complicated grief? How is it different from the really intense, awful grief that most people feel early on?
That's a really important distinction. Typical grief, even when it's incredibly painful and disruptive, tends to gradually lessen in intensity over time. The person slowly finds ways to reintegrate into life, even while still carrying that loss.
Okay.
Complicated grief, though, it's different. It's characterized by this persistent, really disabling yearning and distress that doesn't significantly fade. It often involves this pervasive sense of disbelief about the death, maybe an intense preoccupation with the deceased, or actively avoiding any reminders of the loss.
So what are the signs we might look for?
Signs could include a sustained inability to function like at work or in their relationships, chronic sleep problems, maybe substance misuse, or even thoughts of self-harm, especially if these things are still going strong, say 6 months to a year later, well past that acute grief phase. It's when the grief becomes so overwhelming, it actually impairs their ability to live their life.
So it's not just about the intensity of the pain, but how it's impacting their life long term and the nature of it. If you did see those signs in Anna, what's a good way to gently bring up the idea of professional support?
Exactly. It's about that lasting impairment.
Mm.
If you see that, you could try gentle cues, something like, I've noticed things still seem incredibly difficult, and I was just wondering if talking with someone like a grief counselor might offer some extra tools or support.
Framing it as an additional resource.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an offer, not a judgment. You're offering potential resources, not saying you're doing grief wrong.
That's a really important nuance, knowing when our support might need to be supplemented. And finally, something that's easy to forget, taking care of yourself while you're supporting someone else. Why is that actually critical, not just sort of nice?
Because supporting someone in deep pain can be really draining. It can bring up your own past losses, lead to serious emotional fatigue, even what they call empathy burnout. So it's essential to have your own support system. Maybe debrief with a trusted friend or your own therapist. Set healthy boundaries if you need to. Make sure you're looking after your own basic needs: sleep, food, things that recharge you.
It's like the oxygen mask on the plane.
Exactly like that. Your own well-being is the foundation. It directly impacts the quality and sustainability of the support you can offer, Anna. You just can't pour from an empty cup forever.
Okay, so let's try and recap the main principles here, pulling from everything we've discussed. First, lead with empathy. Really listen. Remember that just being present, simply being there, is often more powerful than searching for the perfect words.
Absolutely. And related to that, actively avoid that fixer mode. Remember, grief isn't a problem you need to solve for them. It's a profound human experience that needs witnessing and holding, not fixing.
Right. Instead of fixing, offer concrete, specific help. Think about what they might actually need, both right away and down the road. And crucially, put those check-ins on your calendar to show you're committed for the long haul.
And stay aware. Notice the signs if grief seems to be becoming prolonged and truly debilitating. That complicated grief we talked about. If you see that, gently, carefully encourage professional support like a grief counselor.
And don't forget yourself in the equation. Taking care of your own well-being isn't selfish. It actually makes you a better, more sustainable support for your friend.
It really does. Which brings us maybe to a final thought for you to consider. Think about the incredible lasting impact of just consistent, empathetic presence when someone is grieving. Grief doesn't operate on a schedule.
No timetable at all.
And often, the most powerful support isn't the big gesture right at the start. It's the quiet, sustained act of keeping showing up,
Mhm.
especially after the casseroles have stopped arriving.
Yeah. That continued presence, it sends such a strong signal. It says, your loss and the person you lost, they aren't old news to me. It can be the anchor, really, that helps someone like Anna navigate that incredibly lonely reality that often sinks in weeks and months later. It reminds them they're seen, their pain is valid, and truly they're not alone.